when we're live here. Perfect. All right. I think we are live and we are set. Hello to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our college and career workshop through SAIL. My name is Megan and I work with the SAIL program, the Summer Academy to Inspire Learning. And I have two wonderful faculty from the University of Oregon with us today. Who are going to share with you all of the secrets of writing a fabulous essay. And they have such a great perspective on it because this is what they do all the time. So I just want to encourage everyone to ask any questions that you have in the chat through the YouTube live function. We will be sharing those, answering them at the end of the time. So truly anything you're curious about or you feel like you want a little clarification on, this is an awesome time to ask those questions. But I would just really love to turn it over to our guests, have them introduce themselves, and then they can share their presentation.
Okay, and
take it away.
Thanks, Megan, for the introduction. I will share the screen with everyone first. Okay, all right, so I think. All right, okay, good. So hello everyone, it's very nice to meet you here through our Zoom sections. My name is Helen Huang. I am from Taiwan and I completed my bachelor and master degrees when I was in Taiwan. And I come to the University of Oregon in 2012 for my PhD degree in English. And I graduated from the Department of English in 2018 and stayed with the English department to be a career faculty member. And I mainly teach compositions for writing 121-2-3 sequence. And I also teach some literature courses based on the appointment. And this is a very great opportunity for me to see everyone and to offer a couple of tips and thoughts for your application essays. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Wakefield. Like Helen, I got my PhD here at the University of Oregon, and now I teach in composition and English. Before that, I got my bachelor's degree at Gonzaga University, and I did my master's degree at the U of O. So in doing all those things, I've done a lot of applications. I didn't get in everywhere I applied, but I got in to enough places. So I have a good perspective in that way. And then Helen and I both help students with their applications to their majors and to grad school. And, if they're transferring schools. So we see these application essays from that perspective. I have volunteered with SAIL and helped students at Springfield High School with their application essays. And of course, we see student writing at the college level all day, every day. So I hope that we can offer a lot of helpful perspective that helps you feel more ready.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. So. All right. So. Okay, so this is our overview that this is the contents we are aiming to walk through for today's presentations. First, we will review application tips from SAIL and UO admissions. I believe some of you have already joined previous sections, and you probably are very familiar with these tips and strategies. But for some newcomers, and we welcome you to join us to review these tips and strategies. And we will have our advice for you for how to choose a topic that can best represent you to the search committee, and how to write the essay well, so to engage your search committees with your personalities and your characteristics. We also offer some help, examples for everyone to see which sides the search committees focus on and which parts you can emphasize yourself to promote yourself for the best way. We also have some revision and editing strategies for you. So you can just use these writing skills to level up your essays. We will talk about time and information management. So to keep your snowballs really small and manageable for your schedule. We also provide some resources for you to check so you have more information when you need to have some writing help. We also give you some information about where to find more help, so you will have more revising suggestions and editing feedback for your admission essays. All right, so here is our review for some application tips. Okay, we suggest that you carefully review the requirements, prompts, and other instructions. It will be bad.
Sorry to interrupt, Helen. Can I screen share to show some of the prompts? Okay, here we go. I'm going to show you just a reminder of some of the stuff that you will be looking at. So SAIL has this nice document with a lot of the sample prompts. And this can help you. The where to find this on the SAIL page if you haven't already found it. So you'll start there. You'll go to the college and career programs. You can revisit that previous presentation if you didn't already watch it. Here you can see the old ones, and then to find this document with these tips and the prompts is this link right here. Okay, back to Helen.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so did I share the screen with everyone?
You have to do it again because I took over.
Oh, I see. Yeah, this is okay. I think here we go.
There we go.
All right, so. Okay, so we suggest that you stay focused on the prompt you chose if you are using one. So one of the tips for you to stay with the prompt is to copy some keywords in your essay and just ask yourself if your essays answer the questions that the prompt is asking you. And be yourself and help them to know who you are. So we suggest that you use your own voice and present the strength of yourself, and think about how you can hook your reader and to stay with your voice and your story. And don't reuse an old essay because every university is very unique. They have their particular focus for each different department. So you need to tailor your essays based on different requirements. So don't reuse an old essay. We suggest that you write something specific to the prompt. And don't reiterate the rest of your application. Stay something new and unique, and find one selling point or one spotting point that you want us to know more about you. And that's your strength. We want you to be specific. Don't be overly general and broad. And think about some concrete examples, interesting events, or meaningful moments that you can share with your search committee so that we will remember you much more. And the last point will be proofread, and proofread. Okay, so proofread and check that your essay sounds how you want. You can have a couple of readers to read your application essays. For example, ask your teachers or your mom or your cohorts to help you review your application essays and receive their suggestions for editing, then you will make your applications essays much, much better. Okay,
So in terms of choosing a good topic, you want to think about what different schools are looking for. We, at the end of this presentation, are going to link you. You should obviously already know how to find UO's material through the SAIL resources. But we have a link also to Oregon State's information. A lot of people are applying there too, for better or worse. That's a joke. And sometimes just seeing things explained in different language, might help it click better. So you want to be thinking about what schools in general are looking for, and then what your specific school or program is looking for. What do they want to see about you? When we look at sample essays, some of these examples, you'll be able to see what traits they highlight, what they thought were useful for students. And those might give you some ideas for your own. You want to think about what you want to tell them about yourself. So as Helen was just saying on the previous slide, what's a strength that you have to offer that's maybe not represented in your resume or the rest of the application packet? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge success or something that you would otherwise brag about, like an accomplishment. It can be a challenge or just something you learned from. You could tell us about a hard experience that demonstrates that you're diligent, that demonstrates that you can get through a challenge and be successful on the other side. It doesn't have to be the time you won the chess competition, right? So again, you want to think about what's not represented elsewhere in that application. Or possibly you can think of a story that highlights a couple of different important traits about you, something that kind of ties together two parts of your story. And if you can find that, that would be A+, right? You're selling yourself as someone unique and someone with a lot to offer. So those are some of the best strategies for choosing a good topic. Helen, did you want to add anything to that part?
I think you did a very great job, Eleanor. Yeah, it covers my points. I think maybe one selection point will be very, very selective about the topics you want to write. You probably could have multiple good candidates to put in your prompt, or to put in your essay, but based on different requirements each prompt requires, I would suggest that be really selective about the context you can write.
Yeah, and I also just want to kind of reiterate something I said before. It doesn't have to be a huge accomplishment, and it also doesn't have to be like, I overcame the biggest challenge in the world. So sometimes when I've worked with students who are working on their scholarship essays, they feel like, I don't have a tale of overcoming incredible hardship that's going to be compelling and memorable. But you can have a story about a class that was hard for you, or getting up the courage to try out for a sport you weren't sure about. And that is a small story, but it can still illustrate cool things about you and things that are important about you and things that you'll bring to that college community that the application committee will be excited to read. So don't feel like you have to think of the most dramatic thing that ever happens to you. And if something dramatic happens to you, don't feel like you have to share that. So think about what's the story, and also what does it illustrate about you as you choose your topic.
That's really good. So I think Eleanor's points also leads me to talk about how write it well. So for the first point that we list here is the key terms from prompt. I think Eleanor's explanations gives me a thought that is the task and art about how we translate our experience into a very touching and engaging writings to show to our committee members. So key terms from the prompt, they will say, oh, think about challenge, think about your strength, think about some most dramatic, no, they probably don't use dramatic.
They probably don't use dramatic.
Extraordinary excellent situations happening to you before, and how you can have your feeling for that, something like this.
I was going to say, so one example from the common application essay, one is reflect on a time when you challenged or questioned a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? So you can make it clear to them that that's the question you're answering by using some of those keywords. I challenged a belief that I had, right? And you don't need to repeat those words a billion times in the essay, but it helps show them that you're focused. And that's what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you also earn a space to redefine how these words mean to you in your essay. So you can just have that kind of a translation arts in your writing. And story telling versus academic essay writing, as you probably know that academic essay writings focus on very objective and serious and argumentative tone and flow to present your ideas. But in your essays, you probably can mix different tones in your writing. For example, you probably can use a personal stories or experience to hook your search committee, and for the follow-up paragraphs, you can just explain the significance of this experience and let us know what kind of understandings and feelings you have been having from this experience. So this could be a ways to mix different tones and or ideas for your essay writing.
Yeah, this one is kind of important because I think sometimes, and when you see the examples, you'll see some examples of real storytelling, real creative writing. And that can be intimidating to those of us who are not creative writers. So it's an option. Telling a really engaging story in a creative way is an option that tells us your voice. But you can also tell a compelling story about who you are in a more standard essay format, using topic sentences, using supporting details. And if that's the way you're comfortable writing, you can do that too. So it can be useful to choose between them, still making sure that you're meeting the requirements of the prompt. And if you are a fairly confident writer, you can mix those genres to good effect. That you'll see that in a couple of the examples.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the matter is about how you show yourself to the search committee. So we have very good and deep impressions about yourself and also your writing. So that's why we also mentioned about intros and hooks. Now you need to get your readers to stay with you. Maybe some of you have read Moby Dick. So the opening of the Moby Dick has been discussed so many times. It's just very simple, just 3 words like "call me Ishmael," and people just okay. So it's one of the greatest openings of the masterpieces. Yeah, but think about how "call me Ishmael" become a hook to engage the readers and just lead them to finish this novels of 400 or 300 pages. This is super long, but it just opened with 3 words. So this is a super powerful opening that you can think about how you hook your readers and don't let them go away from your writing.
Yep, this is a genre where you are probably not going to start with the kind of academic essay, since the beginning of time, people have cared about writing. You want to start, more in the story with something that's exciting and engaging because you have less space and you really want them to be excited about who you are and what your paper says, what your essay says right away. So thinking about, can my first few sentences be engaging? And what would that look like to get my reader curious?
Exactly. And then don't forget to show, so what should they learn from this story? You could use your personal experience, you can use academic writings, but let us know how you draw your writings, your experiences together at the end or along the way with a thesis or without. You can use your words to transmit your thoughts and your feelings and hammer your readers to stay with your train of thought. And what you learned and how this, what you learned from this experience you describe here, and how this experience shows who you are and how this shows what you are bringing to campus. These are very, very valuable points that we really treasure of. So please just show us about so what your personal stories or experience or your essay really matters with us, with your college education, and we can see your potentials within the following 4 years college education.
Yeah, so that's in some ways sort of a like hidden part of the question. So that prompt, one of the sample questions I read before, reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. You could just tell us a story about that with no then what? But ideally, you want that should illustrate something about who you are and why that makes you a good candidate. So you want to conclude, here's what you should learn about me from the time I challenged my belief, right? And you don't need to say it quite that explicitly, but the essay answer should contain that. This isn't just a story with no context. The context is I'm an interesting, memorable person with a lot to contribute to campus. And all of you are. So it's a matter of finding out how to say that.
Yeah, great point, Eleanor. So I think there is an underlying point or thought that is, think about how you can contribute to campus, how you can contribute yourself to this college educations, and what you can bring to our campus, so to that our campus become more diverse or become more inclusive. Yeah, this just for a couple of examples, but don't be shy to show yourself to the search committee. And the final reminders will be maintaining focus. I know everyone right now, you probably have tons of thoughts that, okay, yes, I have this, I can write for my essays, I can have that for my essays, I can have this for my English. They are super brilliant and beautiful, but don't forget that you need to maintain the focus. So to expose one main things in your essays that will stay with you. You can have different kind of strength or performance in your other application materials, and we will just review every applicant in a very comprehensive and understandable way to review every part of application materials. So for your application essays, you just focus on one thing, and as for your GPA or as for your club performance or for other kind of records, I think other materials can help you. So make sure that you stay with the focus. Right, so let's move to the next slides. That's about examples and what committees can see. So Eleanor, maybe you want to show the access to students?
I'll take over the screen. So we were able to find some colleges have provided examples of essays of students they accepted and even given some commentary about what was so effective about those. So the two schools that we just linked you to that are doing that are Johns Hopkins, and I'm going to look at two of these examples, and then also Oregon State. And so Oregon State has like an excerpt from this essay and some commentary that's helpful. And they have these pros and cons that could be helpful. But this Johns Hopkins page is great. They have a lot of examples, including the admissions committee comments. So this helps us notice what to look for. This example from Jess is really creative. To me, as a person who might be potentially applying to school, this would kind of intimidate me because I would think, I'm not going to start with a recipe. I don't have anything to say like that. But I can think about, okay, this isn't a template. I'm not going to copy it and insert my own family recipe, but it gives me some ideas about the variety of ways I could tell a story, and it reminds me what's important. So here they say, what we learn about Jess from her essay is a willingness to experiment, to take risks and find failure, and to learn from the past, whether it is from her parents and grandparents or just her own experiences. Her essay is clever and well written, but more importantly, it shows us her willingness to try different things, to embrace the different interests and aspects of her own personality, and to approach different things with a positive attitude. So this part, clever and well written, is important. That's one of the things that's cool about this essay. That's why it's an example. But the bigger thing is it tells us who Jess is and why, she's going to be able to succeed in school, why they know she's a good candidate. So if you go and look at this essay, this is a story. It has, not academic paragraph structure. This would not be an academic paragraph, but it helps move the story along. It's really engaging to read if you have time to sit down and actually read it. But then at the end, she comes back to tell you, here's what you should have learned from this. Here's what about me is highlighted by these stories. So this example, I hope, shows you a little bit about creativity mixed with that so what, drawing it together at the end. And then another example that I just wanted to highlight, there are more on this page, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. They highlight some other things that this is a nice story. It's structured different to me. This one's a little bit less intimidating because it doesn't make me feel bad that I can't come up with a cool recipe about my life, you know? But it says it connects the skills he learned from switching sports to other aspects of his life. So he's saying a specific thing. I switched sports. Here's a story about me, but there's a bigger impact of that. Here's how that affected who I am and who I will be going forward. And then another thing that I want to flag about this is a nice story, and it's not drowning in too much detail. It's vivid and it's lifelike. You can feel the story, but there aren't 8 million billion adjectives that interfere with the action of the story. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we're talking about revising and editing. But think about telling an engaging and vivid story, but also getting to the point of that story. So it's not just a creative writing exercise. There's that so what that you always have to be getting back to. So Helen, do you think we should show the
Yeah.
about
I really like the point, Eleanor, and it just reminds me about, it's just a kind of controlling if you are riding a horse and, well, you are experiencing something that you don't know, and sometimes you might go a little bit wilder, but you know how to control it back with your horse and with your tools. Yeah, so this is very important for us to stay with the focus. And,
Yeah, so the last thing I actually do want to say, so when you look at all those examples, I want to reiterate, I already said it, but don't use any of those as like a template, right? You aren't going to use the exact way that Jess wrote her essay or the exact way Sam wrote his essay to fill in the blanks with your life. That will sound stilted and weird. But what you can do is look at, okay, what do they say these essays are doing successfully? What are the variety of ways people do that successfully? And then how can I, when I reread and revise my essay, check to see if I'm accomplishing those same things? So I hope that distinction makes sense. Don't use theirs as like a fill in the blank model, but use it as an example that helps you figure out what could work well for you.
Exactly. And I really like your questions, Eleanor. It's just like an activity of meta analysis. So when you are asking questions and to check how you can do for this part, you are doing your analysis for your own essay. So if you follow this checkpoint and you can find, okay, yeah, I probably can find a route for me to compose my own particular ingredient essays to show myself. Yeah, that's really great. All right, so we move to revision and editing. Okay, now we supposedly you have a good exercise for you to polish. And you probably want to ask questions. How can I polish my my essay? Should I just send to a copy editors, or can I do by myself? Yes, you can ask somebody to check for you, but you also have your agencies to edit and also revise your essays. Then we provide a couple of skills and tips for y'all.
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to just real quick differentiate between revision and editing. If you've taken one of the UO's writing classes or a class at a high school that is based on ours, I hope that you've talked about this, but we think of revision as the much bigger picture, like full-on rewriting. That could be reorganizing, adding new ideas, changing your ideas, deleting stuff, changing the focus. So re-seeing your paper, revision. And then editing is that final step where you make sure that the words you chose are spelled right and you chose the right word. So the much smaller level stuff. But in theory, you will probably go through more than one draft of this. And so you will be both revising and editing whatever great story you come up with to tell about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So for the storytelling versus the academic writing, again, so you know that you need to find your own voice and find a comfort zone that you can control different voices well in your writing. But now if it comes to the revision process, we hope that you can focus on topic sentences, that use topic sentences as a markers to indicate or to lead the search committees to know you more, and also to let the search committee know where you are going. So your topic sentence must be very specific and expose the main points of each paragraph of each paragraph. So let us know what each paragraph wants to argue or would argue or represent, like just based on your topic sentence.
So that's, again, if you're doing a more academic style essay. So in that more storytelling example, of course, you don't necessarily have a topic sentence in the same way.
Right.
So it's helpful to know which style you're using and to do a good job, whatever that means, for that style.
Yeah, exactly. And also, when you are editing your topic sentence or use the first sentence of each paragraph to construct your flow, and remember to think about if the organizations or arrangements of paragraphs will make your flow more clear and easy to follow. This is also another strategies you can use in your writing. And as for sentence clarities, we suggest that you group subjects and verbs together. I know if you speak Japanese or German, they tend to separate subjects and verbs from the very top, beginning to the very end, and it seems that they don't meet with each other. But we are English speakers, and for English speakers, we have no patience. It's a quote unquote. So we really want to know who do the action and what is the verb, what is the action is. So group your subjects and verbs together and eliminate unnecessary words and clauses like, I feel like I want to do this. I think I should do something else. I believe I could be a better candidate. We really appreciate your humble attitude here, but actually I feel, I believe they are not very helpful for you to enhance the sentence clarity here. So you probably want to cross it out.
They can also sort of weaken the argument because you're not arguing that you are something, you're just telling us that you believe you are something, which is less effective than telling us why we should believe that too, right? So thinking about, which phrases are just adding length without adding content, especially when the essay length is so constrained. You have a lot of work to do in this amount of space, and you want to be efficient at it. That is, you want the words you choose to do a lot of work to help that you can fit a lot of content into that small space.
Yeah, great point about the word count, Eleanor. So I think for you all, one of the UO prompts, they say just use 650 words and to answer a couple of questions here. And they probably usually have 3 to 4 questions in that prompt. So every word should be working so hard for your thoughts, and you have no space for necessary words or clauses. And
the last one in that section is about the active and specific and lively verbs. And one way that our essays can kind of lose energy is when you use a lot of to be verbs. I was walking, it is such and such. And of course, that's an important verb. But if you can use a more specific and vivid verb, that can save you space in the way that your sentence is written and also make it much more specific and engaging.
Yeah, exactly. And so it also connects to the second advice here is use the active voice and active verbs and use specific and lively verbs rather than get do or be verbs or make that kind of a plain verb without a lot of colors. You want to have show, demonstrate, examine, investigate, questions. When we just see those verbs, we have a vivid picture in our brain and know, oh yes, this is the action that this subject or this doer is doing. And active voice just activates our mood to read your sentences or read your essays. Well, we don't favor, again, for English speakers, we don't favor the passive voice a lot, but German likes
Yeah.
passive
Helen
voice.
and I both read German, so that's
Right,
why
so
that's the example she's using.
yes, that's also the examples I told my students, because some of my students, they have diverse backgrounds and they have multilingual backgrounds. So I think using that kind of metaphor will be easier for them to feel the sense that when people read your essays, what kind of feelings they have. It's also very important for a writer to anticipate what kind of mood or empathy your readers will have when they read your essay.
Yeah, and I already mentioned this when looking at the example, but you do want to use adjectives and adverbs, but you don't want them to overwhelm the action or slow down the story too much. So you want to be selective. In that example that I showed, I thought that this candidate did a nice job. He says, "It was a wet and dreary October evening. I shook off the dirt from my cleats on the concrete with frustration." So he's not saying it was a wet and dreary and dark and rainy. It's not a huge list. It's just enough so that we feel it and he can get to the next part of the action. Same thing. I shook off the dirt from my cleats. He's not saying I shook off the wet, heavy dirt from my too small cleats that I was outgrowing. You don't have to go so overboard to make it feel lively.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Eleanor, you want to go for the editing part?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big proponent of editing, so is Helen. So some tips that I use for my own work and that I always tell my students, here are 3 possible strategies. You can do a mix of these or something else that works for you. Often when we just read our own essay on the computer screen, we miss all of our errors because we know what we're trying to say. And so we just don't even, our eyes just skip right over typos, they skip right over missing words. And that's not good because you're missing them. So one thing that helps is to change the context of what you're reading. So that I think the thing that tends to work best is printing your essay, but it can also work to change the font size or change the font because now your eyes aren't as used to seeing, where the lines begin and end. And sometimes it helps you notice, oh, that word is missing, or oh, that's a typo. Try reading your essay out loud, and ideally do this a couple times because you'll hear where your voice stumbles over a sentence that's not working. And if you have someone else do it for you, maybe you live with someone who owes you a favor, you can hear where they can't read the sentence well, and that really helps you notice problems. If you have a way to have 2 copies, you can mark every place that they stumble, and that would be a place for you to go back to and rethink about. And then if you don't have help from other people and it's going to be hard for you to print it, sometimes it helps to read it sentence by sentence going backwards through the paper or paragraph, because that prevents you from getting so much momentum that now you're missing errors. So those are 3 possible tips that I really recommend doing, especially for these application essays.
Yes, and I also think about you can also use your sensory movements or your fingers to count or to listen to the syllables to see, oh, if this is really making sense, both for sounds, for my imageries, and also for my words. Yeah, so use your 5 senses to help you edit your writing. That will be interesting. And
another thing, if you've left yourself time, if you can try to edit a day or 2 after you finish writing and revising, that you kind of come back with fresh eyes. I know we don't always have that kind of time in the application process, but if you do, you're much more likely to see problems than you would if you have to edit 2 minutes after you finish writing.
Yes. And I will say that the more you do and the more familiar we will have, because you probably have a couple of templates and you can edit from somewhere else, but don't use your old essays. I mean, you familiar yourself with this pace, and you can have a better time management for your future applications. So you can do the editing process much earlier than the due date. That will be very helpful.
Yeah, and that helps us transition into time and information management.
Yes. Okay, so as for time management, we will suggest that you keep your tasks really small and manageable. Well, everyone has your own pace. We just offer a couple possible and plausible, feasible strategies here. Keep your tasks smaller and manageable that you can do every day, and you don't feel very stressful. You are able to complete day by day, but not so terribly to take out so much your time. And do your task every day or have set times to do your application work. Okay. For example, you can schedule it like any other appointment for half an hour or an hour, and you totally save those time sections for your application work. And you can have,
Yeah, we this is all about all of your application process and materials, but the essay especially does require time set aside for you to do it. Even creative writing, you do need to set aside time. You can't just wait for inspiration to strike. So Helen likes to, have a little bit of time every day, so it's always fresh in her mind. And I also find that effective, but other times I'll schedule it like, okay, I have biology at 10, and then I'm going to take an hour lunch, and then I have an hour and a half set aside for applications on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
And that's like my set time, and I know it, and I'm prepared for it, and I don't have to think about when to fit it in.
Yeah,
exactly. In my calendar.
Yeah, repetition. Yeah, just keep it just like a repetition, and you don't use your brain to process that kind of additional information. And you can also have a team or coach to count on daily or weekly progress. They just kind of keep checking in, say, hey, Eleanor, have you finished your Tuesdays and Thursdays application work? Or right now I just receive reminder emails from my writing coach every day, say, hey, what's your 15 minutes writing projects or writing progress doing for every day. So it's kind of friendly reminders to keep us engaged with our application process, and try to pair your application work with something that you really enjoy and reward yourself. For example, if I finish 15 small writing for my daily work, I probably can give myself a couple of coffee or a small slice of a cake, something like that.
Yeah, I do a like even smaller one. Like I have my favorite highlighters, and I'll save those and only use them when I'm doing the work that's like hardest in my day. So you might have your like special application working on journal and your like special pen. And it's like a treat that only goes with this task that you need to finish.
Exactly.
See if that works for you.
And plan to finish each applications with a few days to spare. It also gives you enough time to do your editing and your revision. I know it's hard because as a human beings, our brain will just process something which is really urgent and rushed. We need to do every day, and then we tentatively or we get used to postponing something which is not super urgent later, and when it's close to the deadlines. It's very natural, but we need to train our brain circuits to another way, saying we need to do this important work with a small amount every day or every week. It's just a practice to enhance your well-being. You have to do it as soon as possible rather than the last minute.
Yeah, I straight up lie to myself about when stuff is due, and that helps me.
I know that. Yeah, I'm a horrible procrastinator, but I know I need to train my my brain, also my habit.
Yep.
And be realistic and build up in cushion times. Yeah, so don't think about you need to jam everything within one day, or you can say, okay, I can finish this application folders within a weekend, and usually we can't. So you have to be really realistic to schedule your time.
Yeah, I try to make a goal that would put me on track to finish a couple days early. And then if I fall behind, I still have that. I have built in that cushion, so it's okay.
Yeah.
And then Helen and I also wanted to note that, you're a human, and part of being realistic is knowing that depending on how the world is treating you right now, no system might work perfectly. So for me, I just need a system that gets me like 75% of the way there. And then I can use my momentum to like cruise into the finish if I have to. And then, even if I feel like I'm sort of in a rush the last couple of days of the application season, I know that I had everything good up until then. And I feel confident that even though I'm like scrambling with a website's weird interface the night before, the material I'm submitting is good because the system was in place to get that all done earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Or try not to jam yourself with 3 more big tasks every day. Just try to keep yourself manageable for everything, and you have a more confident feelings for your own self, and this confidence will reward you back and to move your circuits to a more positive directions, and it will be very smooth for you to do something else, and you will gain and more confidence from something else. And I think there's a kind of a plus circulation, which is really good for our brain circulation and also well-being.
So I think we can cruise through this information management really quickly. You want to make sure you have a system where you can find the stuff you need. And that can be whatever works for you. But we recommend being consistent with your system. So that is, if I save like the web page of a school I want to apply to, I always do it right away in the same folder so that I'm not losing it or searching through things. I always use the same notebook for my notes, and then the page of notes for X isn't just lost somewhere. I try to track my progress, including like I decided not to apply there, so I'm crossing it out in my spreadsheet and making a note, or I finished that application and I submitted it on this day. So you want to make sure that you remember what happened so that in the spring, when hopefully you're getting dozens of acceptance letters, you know who you're waiting for or who you're not waiting for. You're clear on what you accomplished and when. And then on this slide, we have a couple of examples of ways to organize your information. But again, that'll vary person to person, what works for you.
Yes, Eleanor, I think now it's 2:47. Probably we will stop here to have more questions, or
I think so. We have just a few links to resources and where to go for more help that you'll be able to see later once they get this presentation online.
Right, so here's resources for applicants and where to get more help. And we also give you the links, so it's easier for everyone to have more helps if you want.
Yeah. Okay, so one question we got is, I feel weird talking about myself and personal things. What's your advice for overcoming this so I can write a good essay? I agree. That is hard. I think going through a few drafts can help make it feel less awkward. Sometimes talking about it with someone else with your voice can help you to draw out what are the parts of this that are an engaging story. A lot of us are better at doing it with our voices than in writing. And so that can be a good first step. Again, maybe you live with someone who owes you some favors, like a dad who has to help you. Helen, do you have other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think you can choose the content that you really feel comfortable to share with the search community. And just like what I said earlier, it's an art about translation. It's about how you translate your feelings or your selective content into a certain kind of presentations to show to us. So you earn the space to define, translate, transform, and create. And you are the writer, you have the agency, and we are here to listen to your wonderful stories, and we appreciate that one.
Yeah. So, and also remember, almost everybody probably feels the same way, that it's awkward. And that's okay,
It's
practicing will make it easier. So another question, what if the essay prompt is vague? How should I choose what to write? So the prompts are on purpose vague, including at the U of O, one of the options is just write an essay. And so they're vague on purpose, and that's in theory to allow you to choose a thing to talk about. If you're dealing with that all the way vague option, just write an essay, I would look at those samples from the common application that SAIL has on their page
Mm.
and see if one of those helps you choose a specific story. Otherwise, they're still fairly vague. And I think that you have to go back to the tips we were giving before. What's a part of you, your personality, your accomplishments, what you bring to the table, that isn't shown on your CV or your resume, that isn't shown in the other parts of the application document?
Mm.
So, maybe I have decent grades, but it's not illustrated in all that like I work so hard to get those grades. I'm not a person for whom it comes supernaturally, and I want to show that. I don't mean supernaturally, you know what I mean. It doesn't come naturally, right? For these great grades, for example. So I want to tell a story about how hard I work. Maybe I skipped a cool senior year event to study harder for this important test. And I want to show that illustrates how I prioritize things and how I get things done that matter to me. So that's kind of vague, but I'm thinking, what's a thing about me that makes me a good applicant, that makes me a good member of a campus community that you wouldn't see somewhere else on my application? And it can be kind of hard to know that. So that's another thing. Sometimes talking to other people who know you real well,
Mm.
favorite teacher, a parent, a good, honest, insightful friend, maybe, they might be able to help you think of some of those things. What do you think, Helen?
Yeah, exactly. And I also want to have the strategies I keep talking about. I know I'm rambling here right now. I think, again, it's an art of translation. How can you translate this vagueness into a certain level of concreteness about yourself? And that is the work you can do within the 650 words that you can show us. And so, well, we search committees are so familiar with the prompts we provide to with our applicants. So we understand what, or we can anticipate what contents we will have. But if an applicant can really translate these prompts really well and present in its selling points very, very beautifully, that will be very, very eye-catching, I think.
I was going to share my screen for one of these. This question is, I don't consider myself to be a good writer. Will the essay make or break my application? So I'm going to show you, this is from the UO's page. This is a list of the stuff that they're considering. Coursework, grades, grade trend. So in theory, that means they want to see that your grades got better. But often there's a place where you can explain if that's not what happened and why. Test scores, course load, motivation as demonstrated by the essay, extracurriculars, ability to enhance the diversity of the university, academic potential, and special talents. So a lot of these are things that you're showing off in the application essay, not just by writing it well, by being like the best academic or creative writer. These are things that the essay shows even if you're not the best writer. But also, as you can see, there's a bunch of stuff that they're considering besides the essay. So no, the essay won't break your application if you're a good candidate. I do think that essay can make you stand out. It can make you maybe move up in their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And it can certainly flesh out how they think of you. It can add a lot. Helen, did you want to add anything to that one?
I really appreciate this questions. I think it asks everyone, or it shows everyone that we have this common anxiety. I have that kind of anxiety too. That's why I am a super serious and terrible procrastinator, because I always worry about my writing, even for 2 pages, still very, very choppy and inchoate and amateur, even though I'm a PhD of the English department. Yeah, I still have that anxiety. So I really appreciate this questions, but I think what we are doing right now is we recognize this point if we have this anxiety, but we don't let it bummer us or stop us to present ourselves. And we can have a lot of writing help to support us. So for example, if you have a couple versions of your essays and you can go for writing tutors, you can check with your academic advisors, you can ask for your friends to help for editing or for reading and have insightful writing feedbacks. They are very good. So I think we can have writing help rather than sit on the sofa and say, I'm really worried that I'm not a good writer. I don't think that there's anyone who is a talented writer, even though you think Ernest Hemingway, well, you just never know that how much he edited or revised or discarded his manuscripts.
And we do know a lot of famous writers did a ton of revision.
Yes.
And even if some didn't, you still can, and that's part of the process, and it's great. So I think that gets at a couple of these other questions. Tips to avoid rambling, definitely revising, like write a first version that rambles and then go back to it and tighten it up. Tips for proofreading we went over, but taking that time and space, having someone else help. We will have on that last slide resources for essay help, and those include SAIL, your existing teachers, sometimes family members. If you think your family members are adept at this kind of writing, you might not have parents who feel confident helping you, and that's totally okay too. But there are people at your school, and there are people at the school you're applying to, and there are people probably that you know from classes who can just be that extra set of eyes. There's a question about word limit. So the word limit is the maximum that they'll accept. Some places, literally, it won't even let you paste in any extra words than the limit. So it's better to be shorter than the word limit.
Yes, I heard of one story or theory saying that if this only go for 2 pages for single space, some committee members will just stop reading at the end of the second page.
Yeah.
Even though they probably have some they know something more for the 3rd or the 4th or 5th page, but they said, well, I have no time, and we have to give each applicant the same amount of time to review their application folder. So
yeah, so you want to try to be under the limit. You don't want your so what part to get cut off. That would be bad. There's one that I don't know the answer to, but some of the application staff or the admission staff and maybe some of the sales staff would know. Do the people reading the essay usually read all of my essays, or should each one stand on its own? I'm not sure what their process is. I would think that the process could vary school to school, so it's better for them to stand on their own just in case. But I don't know if Megan or anyone knows that. Maybe. Oh, Megan's coming to us.
Yeah, Eleanor, I think you're right. I think it probably does vary. I think I have heard that sometimes they get, kind of cut up and separated from each other and get scored separately, or maybe you do have a place that's reading it as like more of a holistic application and they really want to know every single answer to those questions. So I think it doesn't hurt, like you're saying, to kind of make them a self-contained story, just in case.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Megan. That's good. And then here's one. If 2 different applications have the same prompt, can I really not submit the same one? I would say you probably can if it's the same prompt. The thing about not reusing essays is generally advice to not take an essay written for something else and try to cram it into the prompt. So for example, if you wrote a personal narrative as a sophomore in high school that you thought was pretty good, that probably will stand out to them that it wasn't written for this purpose when they're reading it as an application essay. So I think that that's what that advice generally means. If it's just similar prompts, you want to make sure you notice the differences and tailor that answer. But if you're using the Common App, you're just submitting the same essay to a bunch of schools, and that's the point. It's to save you time and be more compassionate to you and your life. So yeah, you can use the same one if it's literally the same prompt.
And we have a very great questions here. It says that I have faced some challenges during the pandemic that have affected my school work. And what is the best way to address that? Thanks. This is a very great question. And I think it's a lot of questions, there's a this is question a lot of students will have. I think, well, we address that because everyone knows that everyone is burned out right now. And as we just discussed in today's presentation, let us know what means to you and what's the significance we can have from your experiences when you come back or when you experience this pandemic, for better or worse, for positive or negative, but it shows the real you, and it also shows the real you to work through this challenge and also transform yourself to meet the college requirements. And we really appreciate that great passions and engagement.
Yeah, I'd also say one reason this can be harder than a challenge you faced 3 years ago that you're going to write about is that you might not have solved how you're going to address your pandemic challenges yet. You're still tired, and maybe your schoolwork still isn't great. And that's true for a lot of people. So colleges will be used to seeing that this year. Definitely know that. So you don't have to say I have it solved. There are a few strategies, you can talk about what you're learning from this experience, but you might talk about a time you met a challenge in the past and how you think that will apply going forward from this big challenge. So those are a couple of possible ideas, but do know you are absolutely not alone in struggling this year, and colleges will know that.
Right.
Megan, do we have time real quick for the hook question?
Yeah, do you want to leave that as maybe it's appropriate as our last
real
question
quick.
here.
I have to give credit to a colleague of ours. Her name is Megan Crooks. She was my assistant teacher a few years ago, and she wrote an amazing worksheet on types of hooks. So here are some possibilities. You could start with a joke. You could start with an engaging quote, especially if it's someone who's part of your story. You could just start in the middle of your story. As if you look at some of those examples, they just start in the middle. You could start with an interesting definition, more interesting than dictionary.com says, probably. You can start with where you're going to conclude and circle us back to that. Now I'm not going to remember. I'm not going to do Megan justice that she came up with so many great hook ideas. You saw in one of those samples, someone started with a recipe. People might start with just a bold statement that merits explaining, like "call me Ishmael." Or I remember I saw a sample once that was something like, "Everyone always comments on my hair." And then they went on from there, and they told about how their hair helped them develop their personality and illustrated their personality and whatever. So I think of the hook as like the bridge from your application person, like on a coffee break, talking about the news, to sitting down. And how are you going to get them engaged in reading about you for this 600 words or however long it is? And you don't want it to be like 6 sentences about since the dawn of time, people have applied to college, probably. But there are a lot of engaging ways to do it.
Yeah. Thanks, Eleanor. I think these are great hooks. I should just make my notes about.
I'll send you Megan's worksheet.
Yes. I also think that, well, now winter break is coming, and you probably will have a couple days or a couple weeks for you to take a breath. You probably will just watch Netflix or Hulu or for series. Okay, so probably you can just watch the title. No, not title. The opening. The opening of different series, and just for a couple of minutes, not too long, not to drag yourself totally for Netflix for a whole day, but you just think about how they expose the opening to engage the viewer. Because now we have so many series, and every series has its strength, and everyone said this is a kind of a extraordinary. You cannot miss in 2020, but you cannot miss in 2020 for 100 series, but obviously you don't have so much time, right? So you have to think about how different directors will catch your eyeballs, and if you believe this is a really good way, maybe you can translate and take it and rephrase it with your own language or tone.
And my last thought about that, tone is important. So don't start with a joke if your essay is about the saddest thing that ever happens to you.
Mhm.
You want the
Yeah,
tone to match. So that's my last thought about hooks. It
exactly.
establishes that tone too.
Yeah, it reminds me that the Queen's Gambit is on my list that I have to watch it during the winter break.
After we're all done with all of this work this term.
Yeah, and my students just warn me, say, be careful, okay? If you just watch the first episode of the Queen's Gambit, you will have spent all your night to finish the whole season. I said, really?
That's what you want people to
Yes.
feel about your essay too. They read those first sentences and they're like, oh, I need to know more about this person. But if that's too much pressure for you, it's okay. It doesn't have to be the world's best hook, but it will help them get into your essay and learn who you are and what you're contributing to the school.
Yeah, be yourself.
Okay, Megan, is there a wrap up?
Oh, wonderful. Well, Eleanor and Helen, thank you so much for answering all of our questions and for giving us so many resources. I think if you're watching this, you're probably saying, okay, where can I find all of these things? I need to go back and use these. So what I'll do is a lot of these are on the SAIL website. In the description of this video, we can put the presentation, we can put some different links that Eleanor and Helen provided to look at some of those example essays. So we will add those in and you will have those as resources because I think,
yeah,
perfect.
And we can watch
I think
the
those are going to be
Gambit
super
as
helpful.
our rewards in our
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, and best of luck to everyone who's writing your essay. SAIL is absolutely here for you to help you think through it or do any editing, and we just want everyone to be successful. So we're here for you.
Thanks for everyone's
everyone.
participation. Thanks.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll see you.